And good afternoon, colleagues. And just to echo what Helen and others have said, it's really wonderful just to see all your faces on screen. It would be amazing if we were all in the same venue and able to have coffee and buzz around together, and I'm hopeful that it won't be too long until we are able to do that again. So thank you so much for joining. As Helen said, my name is Marie-Claire Bretherton, and I've got the privilege of launching this event and introducing some colleagues to you through the programme. In the room today, I'm sure many of you will recognise lots of different names and faces, but we've got in the room with us today school leaders and chief executives from our 39 city schools and academies, representing the full range from nursery, infant, junior, primary, secondary, special, AP. We've got the full range in the room with us today. I'm also delighted that we're joined by leaders from the County Council and officers, as well as colleagues from the City Council. We've got locality leads joining us as well, who all support the 19 maintained schools that are within the boundary of the City of Lincoln. I'm also delighted that we've got business leaders and leaders from the charity sector whose focus is on children and young people in the city. We've got colleagues from the HEI sector, and Maria from the Children's University is joining us as well as the delivery team from the project who you will meet during the course of the session today. That's Helen Barker, Andy Chisholm, Emily Walker and Lisa Yates. We've also got a real treat for you today because in a moment or two I will introduce formally the Right Honourable Baroness Estelle Morris, who's joining us, which is absolutely wonderful to have her with us today. We are in esteemed company. She will talk to us later about place-based collaboration and the purpose behind this project. But I'd like to begin just by telling you a little bit about the genesis and the history and a little bit about what our ambition is for this project, ironically called Ambition Lincoln. The original impetus, if you like, for this project actually came from the DCS Heather, and I'm delighted that Heather is also with us today and again will be addressing us shortly. County councillors and officers at the local authority had rightly noted that outcomes in the city were lower than elsewhere in Lincolnshire, despite the fact that the vast majority of our schools are viewed as good or better by Ofsted. Councillors and officers, as well as many of you, have a very clear understanding of the multiple factors that influence these outcomes. And what emerged, I guess, from leaders at the council, but also from many of you, is a restlessness, perhaps even a dissatisfaction, if you like, with the status quo, and ultimately an ambition for us to do more for the 14,348 pupils that we have collective responsibility for in the city. And the council has given us school leaders a mandate. They've given us some funding and they've allowed us to initiate this citywide focus on improving outcomes and aspirations for the children and young people in our care. Now, pre-pandemic, we began to explore this, and many of you school leaders were involved in this. We asked you to share with us your experience of being a leader of education in the city. We asked you about the barriers that children and young people face, as well as the barriers that schools face. We asked you what opportunities you thought we might be missing. We held a number of focus groups, a number of one-to-one conversations, and several quite important things emerged. Firstly, many of you told us that the children and young people of our city have lower aspirations for the future than you might hope. Some of them felt that Lincoln wasn't a place that had much to offer them. I have to say this was further confirmed to me personally when I went to watch a compelling theatre production back in the days when we were allowed to go to theatres and sit alongside people enjoying a show. And I went to see a production by a company called Zest Theatre Company, actually a Lincoln production. And following interviews with young people across the city of Lincoln, the talented cast portrayed quite powerfully the voice of young people in the city. Some of them expressed a desire to get out of here. Some of them expressed a desire to be heard, to be listened to, and to be understood by educators and indeed by city leaders. And all of us here want Lincoln to be a great place for our young people to be from and a great place for our young people to be. We need to listen to our children and young people more. And I'm delighted, and I'm hoping that Toby, the Chief Exec of Zest Theatre Company, is with us today. And I want to just point out to you that there is a piece of work going on further to elevate the voices of young people in the city. Some of you I know have been involved in a project recently called Refresh Lincoln, where after 35 workshops with children and young people in the city, we are going to see an exhibition across the streets of our city in the summer, with 40 different vibrant artworks and flags and banners decorating every corner of our city, reclaiming the city centre with the voice of young people about their voice and their heart and their hopes for the future, which I think is powerful, something to look forward to in the summer. The second thing that school leaders told us through those focus groups was that sometimes it feels difficult to navigate all of the relationships with the multiple partners that there are in the city, all the partners who could really add value to the children and young people. There was a combination of feeling sometimes overwhelmed by the number of services and the support that's available, as well as sometimes not being able to see the wood for the trees. Those of you here who lead charities told us that sometimes you aren't able to offer everything you think you could because schools aren't always quick to respond or able to respond. But I have to say, having been a head teacher in the city myself and knowing the volume of communication that we get through our inboxes on a daily basis, I completely understand. But there was a powerful comment made by one charity leader that I want to share with you. And what she said was, sometimes it's difficult as a wider partner in the city to really know what the educational priorities are. Where is the voice for education for the city of Lincoln? And I guess this project, colleagues, is about us finding our collective voice, making it loud and making it clear. And finally, what emerged was a sense from our school leaders that they would welcome all of the support that they could possibly get to help raise aspirations and improve outcomes for children and young people. There was a passion, an enthusiasm and an appetite to engage further together. School leaders said they were unafraid of challenge, open to develop and learn from one another in the city and beyond. There was a sense of shared identity maybe emerging as the city leaders, the heads of Lincoln City. And actually this dovetails really well with the new approach that the County Council are taking. And I'm sure Heather will say something about that later, but essentially it's about using the district model to connect with a sense of place, the importance of locality and the collective accountability that we can generate together for our city. Now, obviously, all of this emerging dialogue about the city was all pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. And having been through a pretty challenging 13 months, I have to say this project has never felt more important. It's never felt more relevant. We need to revisit these conversations. We need to reconnect with our hopes for the future, and we need to put our energies furthermore to the front line. The key is to make Lincoln a great place to be and a great place to be from. And the key to that lies with our teachers, our leaders and our support staff who day in and day out have the absolute privilege and joy of working with the children and young people in our city. So this project has got 4 main aims, and you are going to hear more about this later from Helen and from others. But in summary, firstly, we want to create a team around the city. We want to connect school leaders, business leaders and charity leaders, HEIs, further education, county and city services together to create a shared ambition for the city. We want to create an increasingly coherent, visible partnership across the city. We need to consider how education supports the economic priorities of the city, and how do we develop our collective understanding of how we all play our part. And really, this is the legacy strand. This is the piece of work that when this project comes to an end, it will be the basis for the future for the city, the relationships, the connections, the shared ambition, and the ways of working that we will develop through the project. We want school leaders to be empowered to continue to have a voice for education in the city. Secondly, we want to create and build the team around the school, developing the capacity of our school leaders and supporting them in leading great schools. Leaders who know how to use evidence-based practices to implement change, to sustain excellence at the level of curriculum and at the level of pedagogy. Thirdly, we want to create and build the team around the teacher, ensuring that every teacher in a city school has access to high quality professional development and support through all of our centres of excellence, as well as specific training and support through this project. And finally, we want to create and build the team around the learner. As I said, we have 14,348 children and young people in the city. Over a quarter of them are eligible for free school meals. How do we guide them well, specifically at the point of transition between settings? How do they feel a sense of connection to the city and a sense of being held, nurtured and cared for each one of us that play a part in their educational journey? And I want to start really from the outset by saying that this project is invitational. We're inviting you to be part of it. And it's the beginning, it's the spark, it's the hope that we will light a flame, a kind of uprising in the city of ambition, of partners who are committed to making Lincoln a great place to be and a great place to be from. Later, there will be an invitation, colleagues, to be part of the head teacher reference group, a self-led group who right from the outset will begin to plan for the legacy of this project and lay foundations for an educational partnership across organisational boundaries in the city. Now, before I introduce Estelle to us formally, I want to speak directly to those of you who've joined us from other sectors, from HEI, from businesses and charities, and those of you who work for the local authority and the City Council. And firstly, just to say thank you for being with us today. I'm sure that the school leaders who look and scroll across the faces and the names on this screen, they're going to feel overwhelmingly assured that they're not alone in this. And that they're not alone in wanting to tackle some of the challenges and the barriers that our children and young people face. So thank you for taking the time out to be with us, and I hope this is the beginning of us talking more about how we dovetail and connect with the support that you will bring in our shared ambition. Later on, we are going to be breaking out into groups to talk to one another about some of the most important issues that are facing the children and young people right now. And we're going to ask you to join these groups of school leaders, those of you who come from other sectors, and we want you to listen and we want you to contribute from your perspective. And this is the beginning of building those connected relationships and getting to know who are the people in the city who are in the team when it comes to raising aspirations and achieving outcomes for our children. And further to that, there will be an opportunity later for everyone in the room to highlight other partners that we need to connect to. There may be people who you immediately think ought to be in this room, who need to be part of this conversation and who've got something to contribute. And later on, I will give you the opportunity to add to that list and to begin to build a sense of who's in that team and who are the people we need to connect with. So without further ado, I am absolutely delighted to introduce the Right Honourable Baroness of Yardley, Estelle Morris, former Education Secretary and the only teacher to have held that position. She has continued to champion educations and educators throughout her career. Now, among many of her roles and commitments, Estelle is co-chair of the Association of Education Partnerships, an organisation which is designed to support school-led education partnerships that are place-based and focused on improving local issues, the kind of issues that can't be tackled alone in a fractured system. And as chair of the Birmingham Education Partnership, she's got first-hand insight into leading citywide change, albeit on a slightly larger scale than Lincoln. But I've asked Estelle to talk to us today from her experience about the power of place-based partnerships and really to get us thinking right from the outset about the legacy and what the impact of this project could be in the future. So Estelle, thank you for being with us, and I will pass over to you.
Thank you very much, Marie-Claire. And good afternoon to everyone. As Marie-Claire said, I wish I was in the same room with you to actually get me an afternoon in Lincoln rather than in London, but nevertheless, it's nice to be able to see you digitally. Marie-Claire, listen carefully to what you said, and your sort of analysis at the start, I think was absolutely pitch perfect in terms of a rationale for place-based partnerships. So I think for the next 20 minutes, I'll be filling out some of those things you said, which I hope will be helpful for the afternoon. But I wanted just to start by saying, look, there's nothing new in partnerships. We've got them coming out of our ears. You just give a little mental count as to the number of partnerships you're in. You're likely to be part of a multi-academy trust or a cluster. You'll have different partnerships for which phase you're in, different partnerships for which part of the city you're in, maybe for subjects, maybe for the diocese, Catholic Church, Church of England, or whatever. So partnerships is nothing new. I like to think that the partnership which Marie-Claire's talking about is something different than that. I wouldn't say more important, because I think they're all important, but something which is asking for a place that is more central to what you do. And by that, I think I mean this. I'm guilty of very often saying partnerships are great. It's the way we should work. Then when I'm a bit busy and when time's short, the thing I might drop out of is a partnership. Or if there's a meeting and it's a partnership, it's not my core business. My core business comes before the partnership. And that's natural in some of the partnerships I'm on. They're quite periphery to what I do. But if we're honest with ourselves and just think back to those partnerships which I mentioned in the first place, it's really easy to put them second to running your school, running your university department, running the local theatre, attending to business at the council. So we all make an argument that they're really, really important and it's the way we want to work, but they're not absolutely central and can't be broken and can't be ignored and can't be left. And I think the partnership which Marie-Claire was talking about is inviting you or asking or to making a claim to be a bit more than that. Not better than, not more important than, but different than. And I think it's the different than that I just wanted Marie-Claire to go over in the next few minutes. And I think I've got two main arguments to put to you. You said kindly that I'd, well, you didn't say it in this way, but you sort of said I've been around for a long time. And that's true now. And the older you get, or the more you've been in teaching, the more you see where we are now in a pattern. I remember when I was a young teacher, I taught in an inner city school in the centre of Coventry. I dealt with each initiative that came my way, almost separate from anything that had gone before it. It's all I had time to do, so I had the ability to do. And I know that that's a challenge you face. You've not got time to sit back and think, well, how did this come to my notice? Where's it coming from? But I think the key thing about these place-based partnerships is they've got a history. The flavour of the moment among some people for a reason. So they weren't dreamt up last week. They didn't come out of your survey that you did before the pandemic. I think they're a logical next step in school improvement. And that's the first point I want to make. That's what I want to say about that. I started teaching longer than you would wish to know. I actually started teaching in the 1970s. But I think anyone who started teaching before 1988 and the Great Education Reform Act has been on that journey. You've been on the same journey as I've been, in different cities, different places, doing different things. But the journey's gone something like this. In my day, we all belonged to a local authority and we know what it was like, and I shan't go into it. And from 1988 onwards, every move was about a move to autonomous schools. If you just think of them, in my early days, it was about grant-maintained schools. And we went through city technologies, and then we went into academies, and then we went into free schools. And they've been all about making schools autonomous and independent. So politicians from different parties use different words, but there's been one direction, one sense of direction. Autonomous, independent schools, trust the teacher, free to make their own decisions. And what's been parallel to that has been a lessening, a reduction of the role of local authorities. Now's not the time to talk about that and whether it's been good, but there have been some huge benefits from that. You will know what they are. Head teachers who are empowered to make changes they want, people who are more accountable and do take responsibility. And I've not a shadow of doubt that kids get a better deal now than they did when I started my teaching because of some of those changes. And I'm not one who thinks it was all better in the olden days, nor would I want to turn the clock back. But there were some prices to be paid, and there were some faults in that system to more autonomy. And I think you know what they are: not sharing good practice, over competitiveness, Let's face it, we're all in education around this conference today. Some really poor behaviour was incentivised about exclusions, about admissions policies, about taking kids who are difficult and aren't going to do your league tables any good. So for all that move to autonomy and independence, which has been good, there's been some holes in the system created. And in those early days, schools wouldn't even share their good practice with you because it meant that they were giving away an advantage in a competitive world. But what we've seen, I think, from about, 2005 onwards, I think the policymakers clicked that, hang on, every school independent, doing their own thing, competing for kids because money follows kids, leaves us with some pretty big difficulties. So it was about the lack of cooperation. It was about the lack of sharing good practice. It was about trying to get rid of some of those incentivized behaviors that came from that move to independence. And I think as a teacher, you understand that and feel that more than any policymaker can ever do. Because I think when you go into teaching, I think we've not got a Hippocratic oath like doctors, but I do think we sign ourselves up for maybe two main things: to take huge responsibility for the children who we teach, our prime responsibility, but to take collective responsibility for every other child. And I don't know a teacher who doesn't want both their kids to be best, their school to be the best in Lincoln or whatever, but I don't know a teacher who wants that at the expense of the well-being and achievement of the kids down the road. I don't know a teacher. You wouldn't go into teaching if that was what motivated you. And yet we know we've had an education system that has incentivized us to take less care about that second professional obligation than we do about the first professional obligation. And the way I'll just prove that or indicate that, just think of Ofsted. Of all the Ofsted measurements, there's not one that goes beyond your school. You are measured by your individual school. Every one of you is a school leader. You're not measured by how much you give to the system. You're measured by the output of your school. So the system, that's what I mean by the system, incentivizes working separately and competing. There's nothing in the system that incentivizes working together and taking that responsibility for all children. Now, I think there's been a big change over the last 15 years, and you can see it, can't you? This is that next development into clusters, into multi-academy trusts, no school alone, national, I forgot what their title is now, national leader, teachers of excellence or something, NLTs, NTLs or whatever, you know who you are. Your responsibility is to look after other teachers, Teaching Schools Alliance, research schools. They all only get the money and the status if they take on working with someone else. So that's the second phase. It's as though we had a big jigsaw when I started teaching. And in 1988, somebody threw it all in the air and all the pieces came down and everyone said, get on with it. You're by yourself, work alone, do your best, look after your own. And what we've been doing for the next 20 years is trying to put those clusters of jigsaw pieces together or Lego pieces together. Now, even if we get that right, even if everyone's in a multi-academy trust that they love, or a partnership or a federation to which they feel hugely loyal, that's the second phase of school reform, I'm calling it. I still think there's a missing bit. Because if you just think of Lincoln, or I think of Birmingham, we've got some of the big national multi-academy trusts in Birmingham. We've got a lot of Roman Catholic schools, a lot of Church of England schools, a fair spattering of Muslim schools and Hindu schools. We've got big multi-academy trusts from the big successful secondary schools. We've got some, we're a big city, we're too big, we're 400 odd schools. We've got some in the east of the city, the north, the west, or whatever. So if you look at Birmingham now, it's a spattering of clusters, call them what you want, multi-academy trust, whatever, over the city. But look at it, what's the problem? The isolation that you felt when you're a standalone school with no partnerships. is still true, even in the clusters. It's a bit like the tube, mind the gaps. So in Birmingham and in Lincoln, if you make a map of yourself, which says, you know, this is us in our multi-academy trust, mind the gaps. What is there in your system that minds the gaps, that actually can make sure that those groups aren't isolated? And we've made progress if everyone's in a group as well as an autonomous school, but we've not completed the passage of the reform that started in 1988. And this is what Marie-Claire's talking about. And she did it brilliantly in the way she did it. And it's a reflection of the people in your conference today prove the points. But these are what I think they are. Look, place matters. I'm a Mancunian. I was born in Manchester. I was educated in Manchester. I went to teacher training college in Coventry, and I taught all my teaching career, 18 years, in Coventry. If I'd have been born somewhere else, I'd have been a different sort of person. If I'd have taught somewhere else, I'd have been a different sort of person. I'm the least mechanical person you could ever wish to meet. And yeah, I've still got this interest, and my ears prick up when I hear anything about the motor industry. Not because I understand it, but because when I was teaching, jobs in the motor industry and tool making in those days was a really important thing for the kids who left my school. I've never got that rural background that you've got, but some of the issues that Marie-Claire were talking about were Lincoln issues, Marie-Claire. They're not found in Birmingham. It's a metropolitan area. They're not found as much in London. So place matters. And to be honest, if where you're brought up and where you teach and where you go to school doesn't influence the sort of person you are, I'm not sure why we're in the job. It'd be wrong if we do that. So the first thing is place matters. And there's only one group of people that can put Lincoln into your school system, and that's you. Government ministers can't do it. I can't do it. I don't know you well enough. But you teach at a time when we have a very strong national school system. Most of your directives are not local directives. They're national directives. You've got a national curriculum, national assessment, national accountability, publication of national results, national ways of telling you how to teach reading, national ways of telling you how to teach numeracy. Where's the balance to that national school system with a local school system? Now, I know that every one of you, if I asked you, could tell me something that's Lincoln, that's local, that you put in your school. I know it. It could be the play you talked about, your relationship with a local theatre. It could be something you do with the university. It could be something you do with the surrounding agriculture. I don't know, because I don't know Lincoln, but I know that you could tell me something that's Lincoln. So this isn't new. You already do this, but you've not got a structure or a framework in which to bolster it, take it forward, have it recognised. And so I suspect for a lot of you, you've got that local thing, but when time's short, when you've not got much energy, when it's very busy, what comes first? The national request or the local request? And it'll be a national request, because that's your accountability mechanisms as well. So first of all, place matters, and Lincoln's got to do that. But think where place matters. It should come through in your curriculum. It should come through in your out of school activities. It should come through in how you train your teachers. It should be there in the induction year for your newly qualified teachers. It should come through in the stories that your children will tell their children when they become parents themselves. I could talk an hour to you about Manchester. I won't even go there. Let's have a disgrace that the two football teams has brought upon the nation in the last few days, when usually, there's at least one very good team, but I'm hugely proud of that. And when I go back to the pride of my own city, a lot of it came because of my childhood experiences. I had supportive mum and dad and a supportive family, but a lot of them came through school. How can you make sure that your children tell the story of their roots in the way that we are able to do that. So that sense of identity, I think, is really, really important. So that's the first reason for place. The second is this. You talked, Marie-Claire, about the partners you're in your room, and I read your comments through in advance. I was thrilled to see all the partners in the room. But I tell you what, us schools don't make it easy for them to work with us. We really don't. You take that person you were talking about from the theatre, or from the industry, or from the university, we don't make it easy for them. At the moment, they have to contact every cluster, every multi-academy trust. They don't know where the door is. That just go through one door and they can have access to every school in Birmingham. One of the things I think we do that's a good service to the city in Birmingham is that if anyone, no matter where they come from, wants to get in contact with Birmingham schools, they know to come to us. Sometimes with messengers, but we've done some good initiatives, an excellent one on mental health, because the clinical commissioning group, it's their money, not ours, wanted to get to schools, so came to us. So your partnership, I think, is I don't like that term one-stop shop, to tell you the truth, but it's a sign to people who are working with you in the city. Look, we're schools, you know, we're all behind this sign. We're together. So I think it helps your partners to work with you. And I tell you what, your ambition won't be realised unless you do work with those partners. I mean, you talked, Marie-Claire, about the theatre work, and I thought the quote you had from the voluntary sector person, you know, should be emblazoned somewhere, you know, in our education system. It was absolutely brilliant. But your opening sentences were about a city that's got a lack of ambition, although it's got a surfeit of ability. Not sure Lincoln's got anything for them to offer. And in a way, if you're going to overturn that, which is absolutely key, and you know it, no one can ask teachers to do it by themselves. Look, you're fairly brilliant, but you can't do that. You can't do that. Because when they say, I don't think Lincoln's for me, they don't mean I don't think the schools are for me. They think the whole of civic, industrial, commercial, arts, Lincoln, there's nothing there that they can see at the moment that thinks that it will keep them there. So it's a joint problem, and it has to be a joint solution. So I think your best way of harnessing those partners who are with you today at your conference is to form a partnership. And the last thing, there's 2 points to make, because I love this phrase, and I use it every time I speak about this. I think what the partnership will do, it will hold the ring for education as a public good. And we've lost that over the last 30 years. We've lost that sense that there's something intangible that we can't measure, that sometimes we can't explain, but we can see it, we can smell it, and we know it's when it's there. And it's education as a public good in our community. Civic's a great word. It really does play to that. But we know what it is. And it's somehow about a city that believes it can be better than itself, believes that people can learn, that they can improve, that they can master skills, because they believe in education as the glue that holds you together. And I think at the moment, for the last 30 years or more, no one has held the ring in a local area for education as a good, as a force for good. There's been no incentive to do it. And I think that's what Marie-Claire's, I mean, I don't want to put words into her mouth, but I think for me, having met Marie-Claire on a lot of occasions and listened to her, that is what underpins the notion of a locality-based partnership. And that's why it's got to be optional. You're absolutely right. We pondered this for 3 years and then came to the conclusion it had to be optional. But that's why I would want to make the case that it's a partnership that is different than others and becomes part of the core of your autonomy. You use your autonomy and you deliver for your kids your first responsibility better if you contribute into delivering your second professional responsibility, which is everyone else's children as well. And the last sentence is just about the APA, which might be helpful. Christine Gilbert and I used to be HMCI, are the joint chairs of this. And again, anyone can join. We've got about 80 localities that have joined. And what's nice is no one has instructed them to set up a locality-based partnership. And that doesn't happen often in your lives at the moment. You're told what to do. You're required to do things. And no one, no government minister, no directive, not Ofsted, no one else has told you to look at the possibility of a place-based partnership. And there's something quite important about that and special. At some point, they might realise what it's a good thing, and you'll be halfway there. I don't know. But that's important. And so what we find in our partnership, no one's done it the same way. Every partnership is different. And they've got some things in common, which is they've all got a relationship with the local authority, but it differs. They all open their arms to people other than school, but it differs. They're all about school improvement, but some of them are hugely commercial, like Hertfordshire, and sell school improvement services. In Birmingham, we were awarded the contract for school improvement by the City Council, and we're just in the midst of tendering a bid for the contract again for the third time. And it's gone through the proper tendering processes. And if we don't get it, we're in real trouble. If we do get it, we will have a contractual relationship with the City Council. It sounds as though you've got a different partnership with your local authority, and you'll work it out. There's no right way or wrong way. It depends on you. But the APA can be a sort of information about what others are doing, especially in areas like yourselves. And when we do seminars and the rest of it, because we're obviously the same as you, not allowed to come together at the moment, it really is trying to say, look, we're trying to solve the same problems as you, and maybe we can give you some ideas of what might be helpful. So that's the case I'd made, really, Marie-Claire. Hugely supportive of what you're doing in Lincoln with Kyra and the rest of it. You have a contribution to make to APA, as you have been doing. I really very much hope to see that when we get our next conference and our seminars, to hear that you're flourishing. But just a word of thank you to everyone. I hope the start of this term has gone well. I hope it's less stressful than the last term and the term before. And thank you, not just for what you usually do, but for your tremendous efforts over the last year in difficult times, and for still turning up today. Whereas Marie-Claire said, you didn't have to do that. But good luck, enjoy the rest of the term. I look forward to continuing to work with Marie-Claire and hearing of the progress. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Estelle, and I'm sure colleagues around the room will be clapping their hands and thumbs up and all the rest of it, as you do on Zoom these days. But it's really powerful to kind of hear your perspective, Estelle, and also just to set it in the context of the kind of history in education. And I do agree that there is a potential initiative overload, what's new. And I think we've got to remember in the city of Lincoln, we're building on some incredible foundations. We are building on a long, long history. And ultimately what you've said for our children and young people, for them to say Lincoln is a great place to be, and for them to go off and do incredible things around the world and still say Lincoln was a great place to be from, is our ultimate aim. We want to serve our city, serve our locality, but also to see our children and young people flourish. So thank you, Estelle. It's been really, really brilliant to have you with us. And I'm also extremely pleased that I've been able to nab Heather to join us today in her crazy busy diary. And colleagues in the room know Heather very, very well. I was thinking, Heather, are you the only DCS that's ever been a teacher? Because I think you might be.
No, I'm definitely that we are in the minority, but I'm not.
Certainly in the minority. So Heather is the Director of Children's Services in Lincolnshire, and our schools know her well and know the local authority to be incredibly supportive of the school-led system. And in fact, setting up the Lincolnshire Learning Partnership across the whole of Lincolnshire has been something that's been championed and talked about near and far. And essentially, I've asked Heather to talk to us a little bit today about where this came from in her journey and the impetus for this project, if you like, and to share with us her hopes and ambitions for what this partnership and this group of people in this room and more can achieve together for our city. So Heather, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Marie-Claire. Very tough act to follow, very inspirational. Really enjoyed listening to that. And I'm afraid I cannot speak to a group of head teachers without thanking them as well for their response to the pandemic. You know, in Lincolnshire, we've been so lucky. You have moved mountains to put children at the heart of what you've done, and they have benefited enormously because of that. And so thank you to you and to all of your teams as well. I did have some slides, but I'm not going to put them up, Marie-Claire, because it's so lovely to see everybody's faces, and I'd rather not take the screen up with some slides, and I don't really need them anyway. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Heather Sandy, and I'm the Executive Director of Children's Services at Lincolnshire County Council. I am delighted to be with you in the room virtually today, and I'm genuinely excited about the difference I believe the people in this room can make for the young people of Lincoln City. I'm really pleased that we've been able to secure some funding to support you in doing that. I think that's going to be really important, because actually all of this requires time, it requires energy and motivation. So really, really pleased that we've been able to do that and to be able to support you in coming together over the period of time for which the project's going to run. And you're going to hear more detail about that later. But it's about giving you some additional provision. It's about giving you additional support to meet the specific needs of the children and young people in Lincoln. As a key partner to schools in Lincoln, I think it's important that I share with you the Children's Services vision. And it's really simple. It's just titled Putting Children First. And basically what we want is to ensure that everyone is working together so that all children, young people and families can be happy, healthy, safe, and the best they can be. And that's our guiding vision, really. And there's an awful lot on offer to you as part of that vision. And we hope through this project that will become clearer to you, because I think in the same way we talked about how difficult it can be for people to get into schools, we recognise that some of our services aren't as visible to you as we would like them to be. So we want to continue to work with that. In Children's Services, we have a really strong early help ethos. We want to support children and families as early as possible so that they don't have to access specialist support, so we don't have to intervene in children's lives. And you're a massive part of that, and we're very proud of the work you do in our early help space to support families to thrive. You'll know as well that we've got a safeguarding responsibility, and we need to work with you to ensure that children are safe both at home, in school and in their community. But we also have a big responsibility around the aspiration. We want children across Lincolnshire, and particularly for today in Lincoln City, who are able to thrive and able to cope with the challenges that life brings. And we want to support you to think about that. And we also have a big responsibility around the attainment and the outcomes that children achieve across Lincolnshire. And as we've said, it is recognised that within the city of Lincoln, those outcomes aren't as high as they are elsewhere in Lincolnshire. But I really want to recognise that in some places, securing good outcomes for children and young people is harder to do than in others. And I want us to really name that. It is so challenging in some areas that when people like yourselves step into leadership positions, go and teach in those really challenging areas, they're actually taking risks with their careers. So I want to say a huge thank you to each and every one of you for choosing to work in the city, for choosing to give your time, your energy and your expertise to the children of the city, because there can be easier places to work and there can be easier places to do it. So this project's about how we wrap around you and support you to be able to do that. I just want to share a few statistics which I'm sure will be familiar with you. The city of Lincoln is in the top 3rd most deprived areas in the country. It is 45th highestly deprived, that was an interesting word, sorry, out of 326 district areas. It's also in the top 10% of most deprived areas for health and disability and income deprivation. So Lincoln schools face a lot of challenges: high levels of disadvantage, more residents with low and no skills, low and no qualifications, lower levels of aspiration, and higher than average levels of residents with English as an additional language. So as I said, I'm hugely grateful that you choose to get up and go and work in a city that very much needs you. And we want to support you in initiating this citywide focus on improving outcomes, particularly for those who are the most vulnerable. We did do a similar project in Boston, and that's continuing, and it's moving into its self-sustaining phase. And there's lots of learning from that I think we can bring across that will be fantastic. But one of the big things, if we had one of the heads from Boston here, and I know some of the colleagues on the call were involved in it, is it did reduce the isolation. So it really did help those head teachers to feel like they could work together and they could problem share, and they could address some of the problems collectively rather than on their own. As Marie-Claire's highlighted, our elected members and some of the officers at the council have recognised that the outcomes across the city are lower, and that's a really important point that Marie-Claire said, Ofsted's in your schools, and Ofsted and where in your schools are telling us you're doing a great job, your vast majority of you are good or better or improving. And actually that's a real challenge for us, because how then, if you're already doing everything you need to be doing, how do we do more collectively? And that's what this is about. It's about the difference, because children in the city of Lincoln begin their education behind their peers, and that gap widens through every key stage. But I agree with what Marie-Claire said as well. We've got a really good base to build this project on. In Lincolnshire, we saw the benefits of a self-improving system really early, and we worked hard to ensure that that could thrive. There is already a broad base of professional development opportunities, specialist expertise, a research school. We've got an awful lot that you can access, and we need to make sure that we're able to do that for you collectively together. You're empowered to make own decisions about your community context, and the Lincolnshire Learning Partnership has given a strategic vision for education improvement. So I believe that the leaders within Lincoln City on this call are the best people to make a difference to these children and young people and to improve their lives. And Marie-Claire talked a little bit about how we're changing how we work at the council. The council recently published a very ambitious 10-year corporate plan, which recognises the need for us to focus resource and activity in our communities. And it's our intention to drive innovation through our transformation programme over the next 2 to 3 years. And there's an awful lot in our transformation programme document that you might want to have a look at, because your schools will be able to get involved in them. They're broadly under the Our People, Our Communities and Our Processes work streams. And we would like to link this work in so we can support you to drive it further forward. We're going to be changing the way in which our education team work across Lincolnshire, and we're going to be looking at more of a locality model so that we can begin to get a much better understanding of what's working well in some localities and share that across as quickly as we can. So really, I just wanted to say, as everyone else has said, thank you for taking the time out today. It's really easy when we're under pressure to stop doing strategic change, stop driving for better, and to really look inward. So the fact that you've taken time to be on this call is really exciting. It is invitational. Very much hope you accept the invitation and that you get involved. And as with all partnerships, it will be what you make it, not what Marie-Claire makes it, not what I make it, or Helen or Andy, but actually it will be what we all make it here. And the more that everybody puts in and commits to working together on this, the better we will achieve collectively for the children of the city. So I'm really excited. I wish you all very well, and I look forward to joining you at other events in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather. Really fantastic to have you with us and to hear your commitment to us and to the schools as well, which is never in doubt, but it's just lovely to hear from you and have your support. And also, I think on behalf of the schools, it would be fair to pass on our thanks to your elected members and their support as well, because I know that they're really passionate about seeing the city be a great place to be and a great place to be from as well. So thank you for that. Colleagues, I've got one more thing that I want to share with you before we take a break. And Estelle touched on this earlier as well. She talked about Lincoln, the Lincolnness and the distinctiveness of Lincoln and what it is about the city that we want to see embedded in our curriculum, in our ways of working and across our sectors. And I'm really delighted to share with you a very short sort of 4-minute video which one of our colleagues from Learn, Chris, has put together for us, and thanks to Chris. Obviously with the limitations of bubbles and social distancing and all the rest of it, it's not a high budget production, but he has worked hard to capture our kids on Zoom and through phones talking about their perspective on the city and their perspective about the future as well. And I think it's really important that right at the very beginning of this, we put them front and center, and as the project develops, there will be multiple opportunities for us to touch base and actually hear from the children and young people that we're working with. So in a moment, I'm going to ask Helen to play that for us. And then following that, we will take a short break to give you time to stretch your legs and get a cup of tea. And during that break, there will be a link in the chat to a Jamboard. For those of you who've not used Jamboard before, it's a kind of virtual post-it note application through Google, and there's an opportunity there for you to begin right at this point to put questions and comments on the first slide, and we'll be using that Jamboard through the rest of the session as well, so it'll give you the chance to get that loaded up for our conversations later on. So I'll pop the link to that in the chat, and Helen, if I can just pass over to you to hopefully get this video to play for us. Thank you.
It's more safe. I like it there, and it's just amazing. It's an amazing place.
But what I really like is that contrast between the city and the countryside.
I find it really peaceful.
The community's awesome and there's lots of places to explore, like going into town and the cathedral and the castle.
I like how it's diverse, so there's like historic parts and modern parts. For example, the castle and universities.
I like that there's lots of places which I can go to all around, such as the cathedral and the castle.
I like in Lincoln how there's like a range of stuff. So like there's the modern part of Lincoln, which I'd say is like the universities and down like by that side. And then I like how there's also the like olden part of Lincoln, which is the cathedral, the castle.
I like how it's like really historic and like the red arrows, and also my dance school.
Well, I found out quite a lot from research at school that there are a lot of historical sites in Lincoln.
There's more places for you to be able to go. You can spend time, you can go on walks, and you're not restricted to a small area.
I enjoy playing football with my friends and going outside, and it's really peaceful, so that's why I also like it. It's calm and not really busy.
I like going to the football games with my dad, and I like going out with my friends, visiting like the historic parks.
I like going to the Odeon.
The parks, Lincolnshire Walls.
The Christmas market. Starbucks.
There's like people like all around like trying to help you, and I just like the community, and it's really good.
Well, I'd hope to be doing something like an architect.
I'd like to be an author, and I'm currently working on a book.
I'd like to go to college to become a sports leader.
I think in the future I'd like to be involved with something creative because I really enjoy doing like art and stuff. So I think I'd go in that direction.
I would love to be a crime scene investigator or a doctor, but I haven't really thought too much about it. But right now I'm focused on my studies and I hope to achieve those dreams one day.
Definitely go into business, like stock marketing.
I like to be like a businessman.
Either go into business or be an athlete.
Also like to be a photo editor. When I'm older, I quite like to be a steam engineer, maybe working on steam trains. I've always wanted to do that.
I'd like to be a lawyer.
I think I would like to go and help little children do stuff.
I want to make the world more eco-friendly.
I would like to stay in Lincoln because I've got everything around me.
My teacher, Mrs. Dennant.
My teachers are special.
My teachers, because they're the ones who teach me and they're the ones who help me learn.
They've helped me learn better English.
If I get stuck, she helps me.
They teach me many different things. Like teachers teach stuff that you need to like get right back into your brain. Your friends like give you more self-confidence. Your parents teach you manners.
My teacher, Mr. Lanchbury, and my mum and dad and my sister.
My teachers at school are really helpful, and my friends.
My mum and dad really inspire me because they're doctors.
At school, people help me, such as my friends. My mum and my dad, they helped me a lot throughout the years.
There are loads of different sports professionals that make me want to be like them, but my parents have also inspired me because they had really tough times at the start, but then they've kind of fought their way up to it. So now they're in a good position?
I'd definitely say my parents, as they've done so much for themselves and me, and I think that's what makes them inspire me.
My dad. He's really hardworking.
My mum, because she's very smart and she encourages me to study a lot.
My dad and my mum, because they're just like hardworking. They're the people that got me here today.
My mum and dad, because they work really hard to help me out.
My parents are really supportive. I'm an only child, so I kind of get them all to myself.
My mum, it helped me because she helps me by encouraging me, telling me that no matter what people tell me, that I can overcome what they say and I can do what I want to when I put my mind to it.
Thank you, Helen. How wonderful. I wonder if all the parents knew just what their kids were saying about them on screen. Wouldn't it put a smile on their faces? Colleagues, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. The link is in the chat for you to post questions at this point or comments on the Jamboard. And if we can have you back on screen at 2:10, we'll get into the detail of what's this going to actually look like in reality and in practice. So 2:10, colleagues, and we'll see you then. Thank you very much.
Innovate and to support the planning for that sustainability, and creating a leadership and citywide environment and climate that's conducive to really great improvement and fantastic ambition for our children and young people. Therefore, alongside a cycle of peer improvement partnerships and evaluation, which will support a plan, do, review approach, schools will be invited to participate in a core set of improvement activities, learning through a series of development offers, projects, initiatives, which we'll explain in more detail over the next few moments, and targeted support according to your identified improvement needs. There are 4 main areas of project participation, as Marie-Claire outlined at the start of the session, work and with partnerships and coherence sitting at the centre of all of that. Partnerships between schools and all of the other sectors and partners here today. So as you can see on the screen here, we have the 4 themes of work which Marie-Claire outlined at the start, which directly speak to the feedback and the evidence that we found from speaking to a wide range of stakeholders at the initiation of the project. So the team around the city, that connectivity and coherence, which Marie-Claire is going to speak to in a couple of moments' time, that will help leaders to know what support is available, navigate this coherently, bring some of that in a more easily accessible, more navigable way to the doorstep of our schools, understanding what the needs and opportunities are in reciprocal relationships, and to see that resource used widely and to bring about the impact that's needed. The work of team around the school is very much working with leadership, and that will be the head teachers, the executive head teachers, the project leaders, the senior leaders, curriculum leaders, middle leaders throughout your school. This is about an opportunity for leaders at all levels, in which we will be connecting and supporting you to identify needs, plan strategically, work collaboratively on some of those initiatives and projects, implementing effectively with the intention of supporting you to build the capacity in your organisations, improve your workforce and achieve your ambitious goals. Team around the teacher is where the focus on teachers, support staff and the wider workforce will be for them to participate in training and development that enables them to meet children at the point of their need. And again, that speaks really strongly to some of the voice of leaders that we heard previously. That's learning needs, additional needs, mental health needs and behaviour needs. Of course, all of this supported by the work through team around the city, which is about bringing that infrastructure of support and coherence and access to the services, advice and guidance that you need to meet your children's needs. And team around the learner, with the work on aspiration, ambition, and crucially transition, supporting pupils, parents and community to raise aspiration and ambition, support all children and young people through transition at all stages. And that's between multiple different ages, phases and stages. We are unique in the city for the number of infant and junior schools that we have, and we also have very high mobility between mainstream and special, and they are part of the transitions that we will want to work with you on to develop those experts, that best practice, that evidence informed implementation that will support the transitions for all of our young children and young people. So the timeline for the project is that following today, you will be invited to respond and say that you want to participate and you want to be involved. And the main work of term 5, this half term now, will be in the self-evaluation and diagnostic activity, which Emily will talk a little bit more about in a few moments, as will I. And then through term 6, so before we break up for the summer, the development and agreements of what the activity through next year will be. So planning for the majority of activity to be through the academic year of 21-2022, to fit with a regular school improvement cycle as much as possible, but working together with you on the planning and preparation through the summer term so that you can be well prepared, organised and feel that you have the capacity for engaging in the areas and initiatives that you want to. And in terms of our aims, they sit broadly within these themes, and we will be sharing these in more detail with you as you come on to the Ambition Lincoln project. So, of course, we want to focus on outcomes and experiences of education. We heard loud and clear the need for children's needs to be consistently met, and that in itself to be a supportive of children fulfilling their potential and reaching expected outcomes and beyond. Teachers, parents and community have an ambition and an aspiration for the children and young people in their communities, and for children and young people to be well supported through transition at all stages. Through leadership, for all leaders to be able to accurately evaluate impact, notably with regard to embedding change in classroom practice. And the intent is that we can support you with some of the strategies and the levers to make the most difference to pupil outcomes. Making those improvements which are consistently sustainable, and ensuring that as leaders you feel you have the knowledge and the resources at your fingertips, easily navigable, easily accessible, to improve the workforce in whatever ways that is needed, and to gain the support from the wider infrastructure that you need. Teaching and learning, of course, this is where the impact happens. This is where the change happens. This is where we will see the biggest difference made. So ensuring that teachers, support staff and the wider workforce can feel that they have the skills, the confidence, the competence, the professional expertise, the curriculum knowledge, as well as the wider support to meet children at their point of need. Of course, driven by effective improvement approaches and strategy, supporting you to set those ambitious goals and then implement fully, consistently and effectively. And the development of provision so that the education and experiences provided inside and outside the classroom make it possible to counter inequality and overcome some of the barriers and the challenges that we know that your children and young people experience. So there's a culture of aspiration, high expectation and no excuses in school. I was reflecting when the children were speaking on the video earlier, wouldn't it be fantastic to say that one of those children, young people, were to become the second Secretary of State who was once a teacher? There really isn't any limit to that ambition. And most crucially, legacy. So legacy and sustainability, we want to build on right from the outset of this project, which is why the invitation to participate in the head teacher reference group is an immediate priority, and their aim, their goal will be to plan for the continued independent, sustainable, collaborative legacy of the work that we do over the next 15 months or so. So we're just going to spend a few minutes now exploring in a little bit more detail each of those 4 strands of work. So I'm going to hand straight over to Marie-Claire, who is leading team around the city. Marie-Claire.
Thank you, Helen. Now, as I said in the introduction earlier this afternoon, I really believe that the team around the city is the legacy project, and this is the legacy of the project. This is the area where all of the people represented on this call from every sector has a role to play in creating that team. It's about building a kind of longer term partnership across different organisations and those organisations who've got a commitment to young people in the city. It's about educational leaders finding their voice, and it's basically about partners coming together collectively to say that we believe in Lincoln schools, we advocate for Lincoln schools, we are committed to being ambitious for Lincoln children and young people. So it's that collective raising the profile of education in the city. And having listened to Estelle earlier this afternoon, you can tell that we're not alone in this, and we're not alone in recognising that place matters. And I want to draw your attention to an organisation called the Foundation for Educational Development. Now, they hosted a summit not that long ago, actually, in March, where they spent a whole day considering the long-term vision for education in England. And on one of the days, they had a full 25-minute conversation between Dame Julia Cleverden and Sir Jim Knight, basically talking again about why place matters and about what they're seeing emerge right across the nation. Helen, if you can just move the slide on. I'm going to post the link to that on our Twitter feed, and it's just to remind me to flag this up to you all here and now that we have got a Twitter feed and the hashtag ambition for Lincoln. And so if you're not following us already, please do sign up, and we will use this as a way of promoting some of the work across the city. But I think as well, this is a way for us collectively to raise the profile of education, but also the profile of the city for our children and young people. Now, Dame Julia Cleverden and Sir Jim Knight talked about how we need to move beyond seeing social mobility as something that's about individuals succeeding and overcoming through education, but rather to see social mobility about a whole community lifting itself up collectively. And Estelle referred to the way in which we are sort of judged individually, you know, whether that be Ofsted or league tables or whatever it might be. And we're not going to be able to change that. That is the way the national system is set up. But what we can do is collectively come together to say that we're going to raise ambition in the city collectively for children and young people and lift our community up. Dame Julia talks about places right across the country where this is happening. She references Burnley, she references Blackpool, where school leaders, business leaders and sector organisations are working together to develop those sorts of deep partnerships with high levels of trust and that increasing collective responsibility for the future of the place, so for the economic well-being and prosperity of the city that we are in. This is summed up absolutely brilliantly by this quote that I'm going to share with you from Margaret Wheatley. Yes, thanks, Helen. And Margaret is a well-known writer, speaker, teacher, and she says this. She says, "You're trying to deliver your compassion," and colleagues, for compassion read trying to make the world a better place. And you know, those of you in the charity sector and many of us across the room today are trying to deliver that compassion, if you like. So you're trying to deliver your compassion, which knows no bounds, but you're trying to deliver it within a very bounded society. Finding new ways of delivering our compassion is up to each one of us, and you can do it each time you extend past your organisational boundary and ask someone else in. She says, collaborate around passion, not around fixed policy, but by asking the revolutionary but absolutely necessary questions: what's possible and who cares? And that's the question for team around the city. What's possible and who's in it with us? Who cares? So what does team around the city look like in reality? Well, school leaders have told us about how challenging it can be to really harness the opportunities for children, young people and families in the city. Helen, if you can just flick on to the next slide. This sums up essentially what we're hoping to achieve in relation to that. So we're hoping that by the end of the project, and it will continue beyond, as I've said, in terms of legacy, that school leaders will talk to us about the increased levels of awareness and access and connectivity to that wider offer from stakeholders in the city, people in this room and beyond, that supports education provision and outcomes in the broadest sense for children and young people. And we're hoping again that strategic leaders and partners right across the city report enhanced connectivity to the educational priorities of our schools and to our school leaders, and that they've come together to create enhancements to the offer to meet needs. So in looking at everything that there is available already, where are there gaps? Where are there synergies? Where do we need to come together to really create something that is quite powerful? So in this strand, the team around the city, the delivery team, essentially head teachers, you're going to have a team of people who will be the boots on the ground for you, doing some of the legwork for you, gathering information about what's available in the city, making it visible to you, reviewing the capacity, looking for further opportunities to bring people together to offer the support needed, and then again, bringing together partners and organisations who've got agency and vision to talk about the educational priorities in the city and the vision for an ambitious Lincoln. And the areas that we're beginning with are on the next slide. Number one, pulling together charity and volunteer organisations that really focus on children and young people in the context of family, in the context of relationships. And Lauren, who's with us in the call today, is going to take a lead on that. Secondly, charities and volunteer organisations that focus on children and young people in the context of mental health and wellbeing. So what is the offer and support across a range of different organisations for our children and young people in that area? Thirdly, we have a number of superb statutory support from the local authority and from other city council and beyond. But again, Gareth and Matt, who again are with this, are going to be working to pull together that offer and make that really clear and visible for the city, and have a look at actually where is the synergy between that and other things that are available. Fourthly, businesses, HEIs that have an offer for children and young people or schools in the context of aspirations, careers and employment. Andy Chisholm again with us today, really looking at that economic prosperity of the city and what happens to our children and young people as they transition into the world of work and into the world of industry, and how do we increase the range of opportunities there are for connectivity in the city. And then finally, the MAT CEOs, some of whom are with us today, and I mentioned earlier the head teacher reference group. And that's a piece of work that I would like to kind of be leading on alongside colleagues in the city. And really what that's about is exploring from the outset, what's the legacy of this and what is the collective voice for education saying in the city, and how do we communicate that effectively? And so colleagues in the room, Helen will be in touch with you about the opportunity to nominate yourself to be part of that reference group. It will be self-led, but we are hoping to engage a variety of different people to come and help develop the thinking and scaffold the work as we collectively find our voice as educational professionals. So the team, Lauren, Anna, Gareth, Matt, Andy and myself, we will be working with you, school leaders as well, through the regular Connect meetings. We will be feeding back to you on our work as we begin to navigate and put together the pieces of the jigsaw, as Estelle talked about earlier. Essentially, before we move on further to talk about team around the school teacher and learner, I just want to ask you to contribute to who else we need to connect to within this sector. So again, this is the same link that you picked up earlier from the chat. And if you flick on to, I think it's the third or the second frame, you'll see already there are a number of post-it notes already noted on there. These are organisations and partners who are already saying, we are in the team around the city, we want to be part of this, but there may be more. And so I'm just going to pause for a few moments and just give you the opportunity to stick some post-it notes on there. One of the things we noticed when we pulled heads together is that one head teacher would say, well, we work with this fantastic organisation called X. And another head teacher would say, hang on a minute, I've never heard of them. Who are they? And there was this really lovely informal sharing of what's actually available in the city. And I guess this post-it note exercise is the beginning of us beginning to share that intelligence more widely. And so essentially what needs to go on here is anybody else you think we need to talk to in the city. It struck me that we ought to have the football club in here, really. You know, if there's going to be somebody who can really promote Lincoln as a great place to be and a great place to support, surely Lincoln City can step into the gap. So yes, please do add to that over the course of the next few moments, and then we'll pass on to team around the school. So just take a moment to add on to that immediately.
So colleagues, we'll just give you 3 or 4 minutes for that if you want to go onto the Jamboard and add your contributions there. If you want to take yourself off camera just for 3 or 4 minutes while you're doing that, so we don't see your concentration face, that's absolutely fine. And I'll start talking again in the next 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, colleagues, I'll pull you back together if that's okay. You can continue to add your contacts and your wealth of knowledge and experience onto that Jamboard through the rest of the session if you wish, and that link will remain live. That's one of the great things about Jamboard, that you can continue to add to it if ideas pop into your head later, or if when you're talking to other members of your SLT or your DSLs and Senkos and pastoral leads who are an amazing wealth of information about these other partnerships, then do please add them. That will all help with the work of the team around the city and sharing some of that navigation of the support that's available to all of our education partners in the city. So I'm just going to speak briefly about Team Around the School. And Team Around the School is sort of one of the central pillars of Ambition Lincoln. There are 2 strands to this. So Marie-Claire mentioned very briefly in the last session Ambition Connect. Ambition Connect is the central pillar, is the absolute must-have for project leads, whether or not that's a head teacher in a school or another senior leader. These are the monthly connection meetings where there'll be planning, action, feedback. The Connect part of the meeting will keep very short, very punchy. We recognise the value of everybody's time. This will be the place where all of the information from Team Around the City and the other opportunities for involvement in projects and initiatives will be shared. It's where feedback will be brought. It's where we'll have project updates, reminders, information, admin, housekeeping, all of that stuff, but also the opportunity for those spotlight case studies on brilliant practice across the city that you can bring to your colleagues for connection, for collaboration. And will also be the second part of those meetings will be a series of leadership seminars, which will be opportunities for leadership, professional development, possibly for the project lead, but also for other members of your leadership team, curriculum leaders, subject leaders, etc., which will again all be recorded and shared with you, so that that's a resource for you to take back into school. This is absolutely about empowering and building the capacity in your organisations and ensuring that leaders at all levels have the skills and the confidence to drive progress and lead change. So these Ambition Connect meetings will be held monthly. They'll be virtual, and they're absolutely critical in bringing together the partners in Ambition Lincoln and building those partnerships and collaboration. The second strand is the peer improvement partnerships, which every project school, every ambition school will be invited to participate in as well. These will be collaborative peer review groups who work together with a high challenge, high support mentor on a cycle of collaborative evaluation, scrutiny of implementation and impact. So through the 2 strands of Team Around the School, leaders will be connected and supported to identify needs, plan strategically, implement effectively, build capacity through all levels of school leadership to improve your workforce and accomplish your ambitious goals. All of this work will be underpinned by a systematic quality diagnostic tool. This will support the work of Team Around the School, but will be absolutely crucial in the evaluative and diagnostic work that will form the Team Around the Teacher, which is where the workforce development sits. So it's absolutely our intention to be able to broker, to signpost, and to create the professional development that you feel your workforce needs. And again, this is speaking directly to the feedback that we had from leaders, which is just at times when teachers don't feel able, for a multitude of reasons that are, quite often outside of their control, don't feel able to meet children's needs. What's the development, what's the support, what's the guidance and training that those members of your workforce need? Well, Team Around the Teacher, it says Team Around the Teacher, but it's actually every member of your workforce, is about providing that support. And the job of the summer term is to create that offer with you. That will begin with this diagnostic, a really quality tool that we've used before. We really rate very highly, and I should be asking Emily to introduce one of the tool creators in a moment, but this will be of great use to you. It will draw together information that you already know and you have about your school, but will be essential in then creating the offer with you. So Emily, I'm going to ask you to introduce Keith, if that's okay.
I'm delighted that we've been able to get Keith Halsey to come and join us today. So Keith has worked on developing an evaluation package that we can be using for the project, and there are 6 different tools that we can be using for this to support the alignment of the work with the needs of the city. And he's come to talk to us about the audits and how they can be used to support us in our journey of getting the right training at the right time. So hello Keith, I hope you're with us and you're ready to lead us through the audits.
Hi, yeah, hopefully everyone can hear me. I hope you'll all start waving and shouting at me if not. So yeah, my name's Keith Halsey. I'm one of 3 people who created Evaluate My School. It's we're all in school improvement work. We're all in schools every day, and I think school improvement sometimes can be a bit of a dirty word, can't it? In that it's like, oh, aren't we ever going to be good enough? And I just want to say that this isn't about that. I mean, I've only just joined, so I don't know what's been said already. But this is about helping you change and helping you improve. And we're in education, and if we can't learn and move forward, then really, what chance do our students have? So, what this tool isn't, is it's not a tool to hit yourself or other people over the head with. And I think the second important point is it doesn't do magic. It doesn't actually do the school improvement work or the action planning itself. It's really there to help you to focus, to help you to start those conversations, and really to just help you on that journey. Yeah, as I say, we all work in schools, and we're aware just how hectic those places can be sometimes, and really we've developed this very much with that in mind, and all the feedback we get is that it's easy to use, it's great. So I tell you what, if I just try and share my screen, here we go. So this is something like it will look like when you first do, I believe, your first diagnostic, I think you were calling it, evaluation. In that there are just a series of questions that you ask. I'm going to quickly actually switch to a demo site so I don't break things for you. So these aren't your questions. These are, for example, very different questions based on improvement around SEND. But the principle's the same. And the idea is that you just click on the buttons and rate yourself. A few things to know. I think it's really important that you don't get too het up on, is this a 1? Am I a 2? Am I a 2? Am I a 3? It's all about just, as I say, starting that conversation and getting yourself thinking about this. So it's about helping you focus, but it's also about asking the right questions, and perhaps questions that you may not have thought of before. So you go through, the graph changes, it says it's changed. There is no save button, so if you get called away suddenly, as I know can happen, it saves it as you go along. So that's sort of step one, yeah, is just going through and answering a few questions. The abilities to comment, so you can work collaboratively on this. You don't all have to answer all the questions. You know, if someone else would be better to answer a certain section, it really is as easy as just typing in someone's email address and giving them a link to it, and then they can answer a different bit. You can have comments. You can upload evidence as to why you think you are that particular thing. And as I say, you just go through and do that. And that's sort of step one. And it's really just about asking the questions and starting the conversation. It's not onerous. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do this in terms of just, it's the first step. You're going to have to do it. And this is a nice, easy way to do it. The second part is just realizing, it's just analyzing where you're up to, where your strengths, where your weaknesses are, where you want to put your effort and your focus, and that sort of thing. The third part then, I guess, is really the crux of it, and that is the improvement bit. So if you find a bit that you think, right, this is something I want to focus on, you can very simply add an action. In fact, let me do it over here, because there are a few places you can do it. So, you know, if you find something you're not particularly good at, you can simply click on Take Action and build yourself an action plan. And again, I don't know what you've already been told or discussed, but I think this is where it really helps in making an action plan. You don't want to make an action plan for every, or an action, or take some action for, you know, 40 different things, because that's not how things work. You'll just get to the end of the program and you'll be deeply disappointed that you haven't done those 40 things. What this tool allows you to do is just create an action plan for just maybe a few things to make a few improvements, and then hopefully, you know, that will have a big effect. And then the last part, I think, is just tracking that improvement and how it's changing over time. So the tool does that as you come in again and say, well, in fact, let me just come into here and say, right, I've done this now. We can click on complete. I'm no longer one. I'm going to say I'm secure at doing this now. I click on close. That then changes your marks on here, and hopefully you'll get a nice upward slope of how you're improving. So that shows the improvement, that shows the journey, which you can print off and give to anyone who needs that proof, be it governors or Ofsted or whoever, really. But I think the point is, this is a tool that helps you on that journey and helps you go through it nice and easy without lots of bits of paper and things like that. That is a really whistle-stop tool of how the tool works, and why we get loads of positive feedback just saying, this works because I'm not having to deal with lots of paper. I can show people really easily. We can track it. We can prove what we're doing is working because we can upload that evidence. We can build our action plans. We can work collaboratively, and it is really easy to use. It's always difficult when you're blowing your own trumpet, but it's the same feedback we get all the time, every single time. So it was just a breeze to use. So I want to stress that if you're worried that this is going to be an onerous thing, that log in, do this, do that, it's really not. That is the one thing we know about our tool. It is a breeze to use, and really simple. I was given 5-10 minutes. I don't know how long I've spoken for at all, but I'll stop there unless Emily, you wanted me to say anything else.
No, that's absolutely perfect, Keith. Thank you very much for taking the time to explain that to us. When I go into talking about goal 3, I'll explain how the idea is that this will fit with the work that we're going to do, because I think it's really valuable. And I know that I've seen quite a few people on the call today who've been part of the Lens project, original Lens project, but also I know some of the schools in the Catholic Mat have used this tool and found it really useful. So it's not something that we haven't trialled within Lincolnshire already. And I think that it really adds value, but I'm really grateful that you've come to talk to us today and shown us how it works and how we can use it. And I'm going to put it into context now for the project. So thank you so much, Keith, for taking the time to join us. Really appreciate it. Could you pop the slides back on, Helen? Thank you. Brilliant. So I'm going to be talking to you about goal 3, which is the team around the teacher. And there are 2 aspects to this about developing great practice and developing great people. But the goal 3, we haven't put the programme together for this yet, because as you've seen from the audit that Keith's just demonstrated for us, we want people to be able to review the provision as it sits at the minute. And we'll also use data from various other sources like knowledge within the system that we can use to support and make sure we get it exactly right. We get what is needed in the schools at the minute, and we are supporting the development that's recognised by the schools as needing to happen. So we're not coming into this with a preconceived idea, well, we've got this package ready, so actually we'll just implement this because it's dead easy for us. We actually want to listen to the system to make sure we capture what's needed to help you guys move things forward within Lincoln City. So the plan is that when people are happy and want to sign up to the project, but hopefully also can see the value of the self-audit that they can use for themselves, you all have access to the self-audit for a year. In fact, I think it's the 15th month of the project, so we get to start early and then it runs right the way through to the end of the project itself. You get the whole school evaluation to start with, and then there are 5 other evaluations that are available, things like SEND, which obviously Keith demonstrated today. There's also one about the pupil premium, disadvantaged pupils, there's a curriculum focus one, there's an early years focus one, and I think there's a post-16 one that was being developed because we asked for that because we recognised it wasn't there at the time. So once you've done the initial audit, the opportunity then is to select an audit that meets the recognised need from the initial analysis to work out what other areas we need to develop and support that work. So we can really, really tailor the package that we provide for Goal 3 to meet the needs of what the system is requiring. And we'll use more than just the audit. So the audit will be really beneficial because it will help you track that progress, but also help us get it right. But we'll also be listening to the system, to the head teachers reference group, to the local authority, to the MAT team, so we can actually make sure that we are addressing the needs as we move forward for the project. I will be starting to develop this once the audit and that data collection has begun, so that the idea is the team around the teacher will start to become active in September with the different pathways and activities available to start at that point in time. And the information from me will feed into what Helen's doing at Goal 2, so that you're aware of what's coming, when it's coming, and when the booking opportunities are available for that training. Thank you.
Afternoon, colleagues. My name's Andrew Chisholm and I'm the goal leader for Goal 4 team around the learner. And more specifically, the focus of this goal is very much in and around transitions. And as has previously been mentioned, all transitions, including from school to the workplace, will be elements of this project. Examples, but not an exclusive list at all, are things like mainstream to alternative provision transition, into and out of special education, year 6 to year 7, infant to junior, and that's by no means an exhaustive list. So all transitions will be a focus. Movement between our schools can of course be a force for good and a means of noting connections between our individual communities and our city community has already been mentioned, and we do feel that transition is a really important focus. The quote on the screen, which you've had a chance to just look at, underpins that level of importance. So the project itself, in tangible terms, will encompass several elements. It will encompass an audit of current versus best practice. It will encompass training on the principles of effective transition, and this will be online training and collaboration subsequently. The project will involve the identification of transition champions, a posh way of saying keen experts, if you like, but transition champions. We will have, and this will be the big body of work, we will have a series of test and learn projects chosen by the schools from a broad list of possibilities. So the possibilities are the elements I've just mentioned, mainstream to AP and AP back to mainstream, for example. But schools can choose to engage in peer projects, if you like. And of course, subsequently, following the projects, there will be peer-led dissemination of the learning so that we are learning from one another. And there are a series of projects happening which schools can choose to engage with, or even more than one project. This will lead to hopefully the accreditation of city transition champions. And hopefully we'll reach a stage where we can have essentially a standardized approach for all schools to follow in the city based on joint learning and development. This would cause us to be able to address the quote and to be able to say, well, actually, we haven't broken the thread. We haven't done things that might unravel the strand. We've got a systemization based on evidence, based on collaborative work, which actually we all adhere to because we've been part of it. We've developed ourselves as a group of schools within a project within the city of Lincoln. The starting point for this will be a launch of some kind, and we will share the details with you in the near future. But of course, what we're hoping ultimately is that by improving the knowledge of transition, through learning and trialing together, increasing collaboration and developing our relationships further, we can genuinely make an impact on young people. So that's a summation of goal 4.
Thank you, Andy. Much appreciated. Colleagues, I'm sure you will understand that what we've shared with you is the sort of the headlines and highlights of what will be involved, and we will share more information with you over the coming days. I'm quite sure you've had enough of us talking to you, and there will be a million things that you have thought of, written down, reflected on, questions you've half written down and scribbled, and goodness knows what else. And I'm quite sure as well that, you know, as we mentioned earlier, if you were in the room together, you'd already be chatting and exchanging notes and doing some catching up with each other. So we're going to give you the chance to do that now. And in a moment, you're going to be pinged to the favourite breakout groups with an opportunity to have conversations with colleagues who are not only in schools but also the partners who are represented in the room today from the wider city partnerships. So there are 4 questions which are on the slides at the moment, and they are also transposed onto the Jamboard slide. So I am just going to show you how to move from frame to frame, because over the next few moments, what we would really like is for you to have some conversation together, but also share some of your own reflections, ambitions, and ideas and suggestions. So I will just show you, we have had the most overwhelming response to Team Around the City, which is fantastic. I am actually quite grateful that this is virtual rather than an entire wall full of post-it notes, which I would be in danger of losing. So thank you so much for all of those contributions. You can see that we're on frame 2 at the moment, because you can see at the top there. And if I move to frame 1, that's where we have our Q&A board. So if you have questions that have arisen that we haven't answered as we've been talking, or there's things that you want to draw our attention to or you want to ask at this point, please do add them onto there. I was really hoping that but the fact that there's no questions on there means that we're answering every question before it occurs to you. But if you do have anything, then do please pop it on there. And of course, you can make contact with any one of us after the session today to ask any further questions as well. There'll be lots of opportunity for discussion and conversation about participation and questions, concerns, ideas, opportunities that you want to raise. But in a moment, when we invite you to go into those breakout groups, there are then over the next 4 frames, so on frame 3, 4, 5 and 6, 4 questions which have all been provoked by the discussions that we've had today or are part of the overall ambition for Ambition Lincoln. So we're not suggesting for a moment that you have time to contemplate all 4 of those questions and give us PhD level responses to each of them. I mean, it'd be marvelous if you did. Give us a brilliant route map. But in the absence of that, if in your group you would just like to pick one of those that particularly appeals and add your comments, thoughts, questions, ideas onto the Jamboard underneath that question. So we're going to give you 15 minutes. The link is the same Jamboard link as you've had before. Please do take the opportunity in the next 15 minutes. If you want to drop questions onto frame 1, then please do so. We'll draw you back together in 15 minutes time just for some next steps. But please do use this as an opportunity to converse with colleagues, to get to know some new people and meet up with some old friends. I'm hoping you have the opportunity to do both, but to share some responses to those questions. So Lisa, if I can ask you to press the button, please. And you should get an invitation to join a breakout room. So you just click the little pop-up which appears at the bottom of your screen and we'll pull you back together in 15 minutes. Thank you, colleagues. Coming rapidly to the end, we just have a final few moments with you, and then we will let you go and continue with your Wednesday afternoons. So it falls to me to just say what our next steps are, and colleagues, do please chip in if there's anything here that I forget. Don't worry, there's going to be no painful unless you sign up before you leave the meeting. We're not going to let you go, don't worry. We will be sending more information via email to you, which will include all of the slides and a link to the recording of the event with your invitation to participate. I have to say, I've already had 2 schools email during the session saying, count me in, I'm up for it. So I really, really applaud the enthusiasm. But if you want to wait for the official email, then you can, or feel free just to email one of us and say, yes, I'm in, that sounds great. And I've also had 1 volunteer for the head teacher reference group already, which is brilliant. We do like an enthusiastic volunteer. We will then ask you to sign a partnership agreement to demonstrate your commitment to Ambition Lincoln, but that will also set out really clearly for you what the commitment is, so that you've got that really clearly laid out, what will be required in terms of capacity timelines and commitments, so that you can plan appropriately. At the point that we receive your partnership agreement, we will share with you your project handbook and a number of resources, mainly digital, so in the form of video recordings and some just kind of short form information that you can share with staff in your school and governors and trustees, so that you can keep them informed as well. And we're going to try and make that as easy for you as possible so that you don't have to do a translation job, but we provide a package of resources for you. We will also send you in that pack the schedule of dates and the timeline of opportunities and commitments. You will have gathered that this isn't a kind of, well, it is a sort of one-stop shop, but there are multiple opportunities for involvement. So there's Ambition Connect, which is that central pillar, that requirement to engage and participate, to be part of the programme. In addition to that, the options around the peer improvement partnerships, the professional development, the workforce offer, the transition projects, and the opportunity to get involved in some of those partnership groups as those teams begin to grow for Team Around the City. So we'll lay out some of those opportunities for you so that you know at what point in time the markers are for you to then be saying, yes, this is something that we're keen to be involved in. This is an area of focus for us. This is a piece of improvement that we were considering anyway, and at each stage you'll be reminded of again the opportunity to participate. Once you have signed the partnership agreement, again, you'll receive the details for the Evaluate My School diagnostics. So as Emily said earlier on, as part of signing up to the project, you get access to the overall diagnostic. You get that for 15 months. You can use it as much as you want during that period of time, but we ask for 3 points of recording your progress through the course of the project. In addition to that, you will get one of the additional diagnostic tools as part of the package. Everybody gets buy one, get one free, though you don't actually buy it, that's fine, we're providing it all for you. And so we'll ask you to engage with that initial diagnostic pretty rapidly once you've signed up. We'll want those completed before half term so that we can spend term 6 planning and developing with you the workforce offer for next year. We know that that is the preferred way of working for school leaders, that you want to be part of that development and the planning of workforce development activity from September onwards, and that it's beneficial for you to have that set out and properly communicated before we break up for the summer, so that none of that's a surprise to you in September. As part of the communications that we'll share, I'll also be asking for you to provide expressions of interest for the head teacher reference group, with that really key priority on legacy and sustainability. Really, the head teacher reference group will become the guardians of Ambition Lincoln, and will be the ambassadors, the champions, the coordinators, the drivers of the legacy of the project, which feels a little odd to be saying that on the launch of the project, but for us it's absolutely crucial that we have those, the leaders of our Lincoln City School who are really leading the way in terms of that ambition and the legacy. And finally, do please follow Ambition Lincoln on Twitter, and we'll be using that as a kind of means for sharing information and communication, but also a great way to connect colleagues across the city for collaboration, for reciprocity, for opportunity, and generally just for making friends with one another, if you so wish. Marie-Claire, Andy, Emily, is there anything I haven't said that I really should have done? No, that's fab. Okay, thank you. Marie-Claire, over to you.
Thank you, Helen. And colleagues, again, just to reiterate what I said this morning, it's just been wonderful to have you with us today, and to see the wealth of support from right across a number of different organisations and sectors. Colleagues who are part of Team Around the City, we will be in touch with you to begin our work around working out how we connect you better to city schools, and how we coordinate our support for children and young people. And as I said, this is the start, this is a spark, this is the beginning. And I genuinely hope that it's that we move forward together, and it's up to all of us. It's our collective work now moving forwards. And I did put a cheeky post-it note on the slides, and one of the things I really would love to see begin to happen across the city is that in classrooms and assemblies and in offices and in St Mark's shopping centre, wherever it may be, that we start to begin to talk about our city as a great place to be and a great place to be from. And I would love it if our children and young people began to really feel like this is a place where they can have a great education and go on to contribute and lead a great and fulfilling life in this brilliant city that we live in. So thank you so much for being with us. We'll be in touch, and thank you.